And if you do not supply it, if you don't make the kind of competition, you will not see the influx of foreign investments, and then you will be sitting with the bill yourself. And then you will hear from politicians to say, this is too expensive. And then you will not invest, and then you will not create the kind of smart cities. So to our experience, it was extremely important to open up, especially the cities, because these are the most interesting places. Most of the internet usage and the applications are city near, because that's also part of urbanization. Broadband in rural areas have support from state, but also from European Union, because this is a way of also giving support to actually poorer parts of Europe, and there we use actually the cooperation inside European Union. And I tell my electorate in Sweden that we gain from investments done in Romania and Bulgaria and other parts that are poorer in Europe. Why? Because these are our future markets. So if we make them stronger, if we integrate them into our service system, we can then trade with them. That's why it's so important to remember, half of the economy in Sweden is exports. We do not get weaker when our neighbors get stronger. This is new business opportunities. So we should help them up, and we are doing so inside European Union, especially linked to broadband. Very important is the concept of e-government. Why? Because the state controls a lot of the information. If you look at public transports, if you look at a lot of the information you have in a society, it's controlled or owned by the state or by local municipalities. If you do not have a program for e-government to put it up on open data, it will not function. You will not get the kind of applications, you will not get the kind of smart cities to function. Therefore, we decided to open up all of our public information for everyone to use. And the interesting thing is that we could not imagine what they were doing with the information. And I mean this as a good thing, because out of this came innovation entrepreneurship on how to create new applications to use the open data in a way which has been very good for people. This is creating business. This is creating new jobs, especially with young people creating new companies, as I mentioned. It's extremely important when it comes to transport, I mentioned that, but also health. E-health, as we heard, is rapidly growing. That's a kind of knowledge with your own body and how to seek the right kind of help without having to go to many different doctors, asking a lot of questions. You can get the information much quicker, and if you have troubles with your health, you will get the help much quicker, which is good for your expectancy to survive or to live a longer life. And this is now asked for by more and more people. As I said, the growing part of the population is above 65. They will live long lives, but they have a lot of health issues, and therefore this e-health is making their life better, and we are learning them to use it. Let me also say that e-government simplifies business, which is extremely important. It's important for entrepreneurs in your own country, it's important for foreign investments. What does that mean? It means that by simplifying, you could make a lot of starting your business, your taxes, everything in engagement with the society or with the municipalities on the state is done on the internet, on websites. And this is now asked for or working better and better in Sweden, and it simplifies business life, and it's also a cost reduction for companies, and when functioning well, also for the state. This in itself fights corruption, the kind of corruption we have seen in the world. If everyone can seek the assistance they want on a portal, on an application, and you don't need to go to different civil servants, and they ask for some kind of help or extra payment, this is actually doing away with corruption, which is also a very good thing, because foreign investors coming in do not want to meet the kind of corruption atmosphere they see in different countries. They would rather keep out than moving into an atmosphere of corruption. Therefore, this is a very important issue for foreign investors to feel that it's a free and fair competition, not favored just to local entrepreneurs, but also for me coming as foreign investors. I think also that is the experience, as I mentioned, of European Union. Going back to where I started, this will be my final 2 points. Don't underestimate the need for free trade agreements cross-border. I know that you have a close cooperation in the Gulf states. I think that's absolutely what you need to do, because we learned that having smart cities, doing everything I mentioned in a nation state is not enough, because integration goes cross-border. It comes into other countries. The business opportunities are out there in engaging with other countries. So we understood that we need free trade agreements or business arrangement with other countries, otherwise we can't grow. Therefore, the free trade agreements inside European Union is important, but we have now done it in European Union with South Korea. We are in engagement discussions with United States, as you might know. That would be the biggest free trade agreement ever. It's half of the world economy that would actually have an agreement if it actually succeeds. We haven't seen that, because a lot of protest is also against this kind of thinking. I think it's important for everyone, but it's extremely important for small countries, because the big countries can control their own markets. They are tougher in negotiations. They can have the economy more inside the nation state, but the smaller countries need the markets outside of their own. Therefore, the free trade agreements, these kind of arrangements, is extremely important for a country like Sweden or Kuwait, I would say. At the end, these smart cities is the future. It's not about will we have these kind of smart cities? Is this a good idea? No, they are coming, but are we in the forefront or lagging behind? Do we understand the challenge to invest and create the kind of smart cities? Because this will be the needs for tomorrow. This will be meeting urbanization. This will be meeting the new entrepreneurs, the young people asking for jobs. This is the way to the future. So I think this conference is very timely, on the right agenda, right question. The main issue we are discussing in Europe when we are not discussing migration, and we should discuss it even more, because this is what creates hope in the world, hope of a better future, hope for new jobs, hope for new growth, and a more sustainable future. Thank you. If there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for this great information. I'm talking in English.
Okay.
Great information and really great experience as well. My question for you, do you think in Kuwait specifically, we need sort of a political development beside the social and technology development to succeed, to reach to that stage? Because you talk very, also briefly, but very thoroughly about you start with the political agreement between people and then you move to the development.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I lived a long life in politics, as you heard, and I've learned that we have differences in our way of seeing how you should have run different countries. I believe, of course, in democracy. I come from that tradition. But I wanted to say that what you really need is a state that engages in creating these smart cities. Because if the state says, well, we're not sure about that, we can't control everything, we get worried about if this is actually creating jobs and it's very costly. If this is needed, the business life should take care of it, something like that. I think they're wrong. Because as I said, e-government, the information needed, the platforms to create this is integrated into the state, into the local municipalities. So without that kind of engagement, this will not happen. And of course, this means creating a kind of openness, but I think that kind of openness is needed, to make entrepreneurial ideas to function, to attract people to come to this country. I know that Kuwait is also a combination of a smaller population of citizens together with a lot of people that have come here from other countries. Well, that's the way for the future, I think. We will have a lot of migration, and most of this migration in the future might be for trying to seek a job. And of course, then we need to be open. We need to be open for people coming, for ideas to be used in an open society. And that comes very much with Internet of Things, with social media. And to my experience, it's creating jobs, it's creating opportunities throughout the world, also in this part of the world. And that is the main focus, I think, and not actually creating the kind of problems I've heard or that might worry the ones in the state. And again, if you open up for competition, and this should also be done by the state, and secure fair competition, you will also get the kind of foreign investments that everyone wants, and then you don't need to use the state budget to fund everything. So it's also smarter to try to do that.
I have another question. We have problem with the private sector.
Yeah.
According to your experience, how can the state reshape or do and work on the image of the private sector? So it will, because the problem that private sector want to do something, but most of the public, they are not trusting yet the private sector. So according to your experience, what should the state do to really play on the image of the private sector as part of or a support of building the country?
Well, as I said, we had a discussion in my country in the 70s and the 80s where nearly all the job creation in Sweden was done in the public sector. And we said, well, okay, many of these are good jobs, but at the end of the day, the taxes and the funding of this will actually increase taxation on companies, which will create a problem. We can't rely only on public jobs. We also need a creation of a private sector. Then the question was, well, can't the state create the private sector? Can we create the companies? Can we start them ourselves? This is ideological questions. My answer would be no. They will be badly run. They will not meet the conditions of the market and adhere to the different impulses. So the state has another role. It must supply rule of law. It must supply a business climate without corruption. It must simplify business life, make it easier, help companies, investors to come into the country, explain your culture, explain your taxation system, because they want to understand. Every company that is growing in Sweden, as I said, are growing by going into different countries. And all the time they have this discussion, how can we respect the country that we are coming in? How can we learn? What do they want us to do? How can we add on to their society? You must tell them this, but you must tell them this in a way where you are frank, but also open. And you must do it not by saying, well, we will give you some conditions, but we will always make better conditions for our own companies that are run of natives. Because then they will say, well, then we're not sure. If you always give contracts to native companies, help each other, and always see us as something odd that we should keep away, well, then we are not that interested. They have owners, they have management at home will say, well, then we can't have any revenues. This is not interesting. So the state can absolutely do this. And I think a lot of states know this today. Very often I see this sign, invest in different countries. But it's not just commercial. It has to be a reality. It has to be the conditions on the ground that the state provides.
I have a question regarding the Swedish experience and, generally speaking, the Scandinavian economy, where they can compete with the international players in terms of quality of life, higher standard for their products and systems. You are competing against Germany, France, UK, US, China, and India, while you are much smaller in terms of size.
Yes.
And I think in the Gulf we have the same same concept. We are not as big as these countries, but we would like to have a better standards, a better quality of life, and better products. So how did the Scandinavians succeed in reaching this very tough situation?
Yes, I think this is a very important question because we understood that we are small, scarcely populated, and very early in our history we were a trading country. So we have trading traditions. And we understood that the bigger ones will always be bigger. They could always push us aside. The more political agreements you see, the more likely it's to be driven by large countries. It's the same inside European Union. They say it's 28 countries and all of them are respected as members, but everyone knows that a lot of control is done by Germany and France. So how do you then, as a small country, meet this? Well, okay, so you're smaller, then you need to be faster, you need to be smarter, and you need to be more efficient. Because the bad thing with the big ones are that they are more clumsy, they are not moving as fast, they have a lot of more connections inside their country to do. So we learn to be fast and small, efficient, and to meet head-on with the world competition, also by allowing a lot of the investors coming from other countries. That is not taking away jobs, that's creating jobs in Sweden, and it's also learning us the way of others. You would find that in Sweden we have huge investments both from American companies and from Chinese companies. You very often reflect to the company Volvo, which creates cars. It's said to be Swedish. Yes, a lot of them are built in Sweden, but the company is owned by Chinese investors. And we have allowed them to come in to be able to learn the ways and also have good investments in our country. So it's a combination of these two. And as I said, then you can move up the value chain. Now, it would not function if we were not ahead of others or at top ranking when it comes to internet, when it comes to smart cities, when it comes to investments in communications, applications, things like this, because a lot of the creation is now done in these sectors. So also to improve skills in schools for technological competences has been very important. That's, for instance, has been a gender issue. We have had a tendency that boys relate more to technical issues in schools, so we are trying to promote girls also to make these decisions, to move them into a sector where a lot of the new frontier of jobs and business are created. So there you also have a kind of public response. But this is our experience. I would say that throughout Europe, a lot of the countries now having a lot of troubles, and you know a lot of them, you've seen them in media, Greece, but also a lot of others. They have stopped to reform their countries, more talking about getting help from outside, not doing their jobs themselves, not opening up their economy, not meeting head-on the world competition. And they see the jobs they had, they are now losing, and the companies are leaving the companies and a country, and they turn to European Union and say, look, you must give us resources. And we say, well, maybe you should start in another end and do a little bit more what I describe. And this is the big discussion inside the European Union, because many parts of Europe is not competitive today and is not meeting the global standards, which I think is very interesting. But some parts of Europe is. So there you might have the best lessons.
Yes. Does the Swedish economy rely on investment abroad, as well as the export of products and services, like you mentioned?
If there is a...
Does it rely on investment?
Yeah.
Foreign investment, I mean investment in other countries.
these companies I mentioned in Sweden? Or you mean, do we have state-funded, or do you mean only on foreign investments?
Foreign investment, exactly.
Well, it's a combination. With everything I said on an aging population in Sweden, and as throughout many of the developed countries, you will see pension funds that are put up to be able to pay the pensions to future pensioners. They have enormous resources, and a lot of them invest into future business. They are very important, of course. We also have a lot of wealthy people inside Sweden. I would say that in many parts of the rich world, we have never had so much money as we are having now, and especially with low or even negative interest rates, they are looking for objects to invest. But having said that, we also find that foreign investments are extremely important, and foreign investments is very often other pension funds or institutional investors. It's more seldom a person, a private entrepreneur trying to finance an investment. So it's very often going to these institutions to try to explain what we are trying to do with businesses inside Sweden. They move into countries where they feel they are stable, prosperous, where the rule of law persists, and where there are good business opportunities. And they are the first to leave if there are uprising or a feeling that the control is out and that they might lose their money. So they are also a kind of way of where do they seek these kind of investments, and they are very present in a country like Sweden. But they're also seeking everywhere, I would say, the kind of investments we have been discussing. And I know that some of these investments, I should say, are coming from Gulf states. So we also have a lot of investments from Gulf states into Sweden, because you also have great funds relating, of course, for instance, to your oil revenues. And we welcome even this. A lot of the malls in my city of Stockholm are owned by Arab interests, and I think that's very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Frederick. شكرا جزيلا السيد فريدريك وزير خارجية السويد الأسبق. إذن مستكملين معكم فعاليات هذا المؤتمر. أما الآن فمع كلمة شركة EMC للسيد سامر صابر المدير الإقليمي في الكويت، فليتفضل.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. معالي رئيس وزراء مملكة السويد الأسبق، السيدات والسادة الحضور الكرام، من دواعي سروري أن أتشرف بالتحدث إليكم اليوم بالنيابة عن شركة EMC في هذا الملتقى المتميز. كما يشرفنا أن نشارك في هذا الملتقى مع شركة ITS الشريك الاستراتيجي لشركة EMC في العديد من المشروعات الكبرى في المنطقة. نقف اليوم على أعتاب تحول جذري وحاسم مع ما يشهده العالم والمنطقة من تغيرات تكنولوجية غير مسبوقة. فمع تنامي استخدام الأجهزة المتنقلة والاتصال نشهد تدفق هائل من البيانات، وقد يكون لهذه البيانات دور حاسم في تغيير حياة الناس وتغيير طريقة تواصلهم وتفاعلهم، بل وتغيير طريقة تقديم الخدمات للمواطنين والسكان من قبل الحكومات. في أقل من 5 سنوات سيشهد العالم أكثر من 7 مليارات شخص ونحو 30 مليار جهاز متصلين بالإنترنت، مما سيخلق 44 تريليون جيجا بايت أو ما يطلق عليه زيتا بايت من البيانات في العالم. ومع تزايد عدد السكان في المدن وظهور الجيل الرقمي تنشأ حاجة ملحة لمعالجة التحديات المرتبطة بالانتقال والتواصل عبر الأجهزة المتنقلة. فالتفاعل بين المواطنين والحكومة بالإضافة إلى طريقة تقديم الخدمات الأساسية يتعين أن يكون سريعاً وديناميكياً. وبالتالي فإن الحكومات وهيئات الخدمات الاجتماعية بحاجة للمثابرة والعمل بصورة جادة أكثر من أي وقت مضى وبشكل فوري وعلى مدار الساعة لكي تتمكن من تلبية الاحتياجات القادمة للجيل الرقمي الجديد من المواطنين أو ما يسمى بجيل المعلومات. ومنذ عدة سنوات حرصت شركة EMC على تطوير حلول وأدوات تدعم مفهوم المدن الذكية المبنية على التواصل بين القطاعين العام والخاص والقطاع الأكاديمي، والتي تركز على استخدام الموارد والبنية التحتية بطريقة أسرع وأكثر فاعلية وتحويلها إلى تحليلات متطورة وحلول مبتكرة لاتخاذ الخطوة التالية نحو الابتكار ونيل رضا المواطن. ونلمس الآن مبادرة الحكومات بتبني رؤى مستقبلية ووضع استراتيجية واضحة على أسس قوية من الاتصالات وتكنولوجيا المعلومات لإدارة مدنها بكفاءة وتوفير أفضل مستويات العيش والرفاهية لمواطنيها وسكانها من خلال التنمية الاقتصادية والاستدامة والابتكار. نتمنى لكم التوفيق في هذا الملتقى ولدولة الكويت كل التقدم والازدهار، وشكرا لكم.
الكلمة الآن للسيد ريتشارد نايت للخدمات السحابية المؤسسة الحكومية، نائب رئيس الخدمة العالمية في الشرق الأوسط لشركة EMC، فليتفضل.
Assalamu alaikum. Firstly, I'd like to say what a great honor it is to be here today and to speak to everyone in this room. Thank you for ITS for inviting me. And actually, it's a little bit daunting following on from the former Prime Minister of Sweden, so hopefully I can be at least half as interesting and as insightful as he was. It was interesting in the previous talk about migration. I'm a Londoner, I'm an EU citizen. I'll probably vote to stay on the 23rd as it happens. But, you know, let me see how this works. Okay, so basically I'm a migrant in the other way. I'm an economic migrant. So I came with my company to the GCC in 2012. And I'd like to think that we've generated jobs, income, and, you know, real benefit to the people that we've touched in the region. But you have to ask yourself, why did we come to the GCC? Because, you know, back in 2012, we were a startup company.